Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in modern history, Latin America in the 1960s and 70s. This was a time of fire, of dreams, and of brutal realities.
And when I say turbulent, I mean it. We're talking about an entire continent seemingly set ablaze. This wasn't just a few isolated conflicts, it was a massive, continent-wide collision between these incredible, utopian dreams of radical change and a fierce, often violent reaction to keep things just the way they were.
You know, this quote from historian Laura Sonata just nails it. A time where history thought of itself as revolution. For millions of people, revolution wasn't just some political strategy, it felt like a historical destiny. It felt like the only way to finally break free from centuries of inequality and what they saw as foreign domination.
And you can see how this pendulum just swung violently back and forth. The whole thing kicks off in '59 with Fidel Castro's victory in Cuba. That event sent shockwaves of hope across the region, inspiring guerrilla movements everywhere. But that revolutionary fire was met with an equally powerful pushback, leading to a wave of military coups, Brazil in '64, then Chile, Uruguay, Argentina, that would plunge the continent into a long, dark era of dictatorship.
And you have to remember, none of this was happening in a vacuum. This was a central battleground of the Cold War. The United States, absolutely terrified of another Cuba, threw its support behind anti-communist forces. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union and Cuba were backing revolutionary groups. So these internal, national struggles got supercharged, turning them into high-stakes proxy wars.
So, what was the political climate that allowed this storm to brew in the first place? Well, to really get it, we have to look back at a very specific political tradition that is quintessentially Latin American: populism. Now, populism in Latin America isn't just a political style. It's this incredibly deep-seated worldview. It imagines society as this single organic body, with a charismatic leader as its head and its heart. It's less about specific policies and way more about identity, this powerful, emotional, almost religious connection between a savior-like figure and their loyal followers.
And this slide gives us two perfect examples: Getulio Vargas in Brazil and Juan Perón in Argentina. Look at the leadership style. Vargas was the paternalistic father of the poor. Perón, on the other hand, was framed as a messianic redeemer of the people. And check out their relationship with society. Both used a system called corporatism, organizing society into big groups like labor unions. But Vargas's version was very top-down, state-controlled. Perón's was much more active, really mobilizing those powerful unions, which created this almost religious cult around him and his wife, Evita.
So, you've got the political culture, right? Now you need the intellectual fuel for the fire, and that was dependency theory. This gave a powerful academic voice to what millions already felt in their gut: that the global economic system wasn't just unfair, it was actively designed to keep their countries poor and dependent. The only way out, the theory argued, was a radical break.
Okay, so let's zoom in now on Argentina. This is the country where all of these volatile ingredients, the powerful populist tradition, the economic frustration, the political instability, all mixed together to create the most explosive cocktail imaginable.
See, Argentina had this huge political movement, Peronism, that basically was the political identity of the working class. But after Perón was kicked out in 1955, his entire movement was just banned. Can you imagine trying to run a democracy while making its largest political force illegal? It created this permanent crisis. No government felt legitimate, because everyone knew the biggest player wasn't even allowed on the field.
And from there, you can just see the spiral. The military government tries to clamp down and impose order, but that just provokes a massive popular uprising called the Cordobazo. That uprising then fuels the rise of armed guerrilla groups. Even bringing Perón back from exile couldn't stop the violence. It was all heading for a final, brutal collision that felt almost inevitable.
So the response to this revolutionary wave wasn't a bunch of isolated incidents. No, it was a coordinated, continent-wide counterattack built on a terrifying new ideology of repression. The militaries of the region decided they were fighting a totally new kind of war.
This was called the doctrine of national security. And what's so chilling about it is how it completely reframed the very idea of war. The front line was no longer the nation's borders. The new battlefield was society itself. The universities, the factories, the unions. And the enemy? It wasn't a foreign soldier. It could be your neighbor, your coworker, even your own child.
And this led to the horrifying concept of the internal enemy. This was a way to completely dehumanize fellow citizens. Political dissent wasn't just a different opinion anymore. It was a dangerous virus, a disease that had to be extirpated, cut out, in order to save the body of the nation. You don't reason with the disease, you eliminate it.
And that thinking justified the horrific methods they used. This was systematic, state-sponsored terror. We're talking about forced disappearances where people were kidnapped off the street and never seen again. Systematic torture in secret prisons. And there's something called Plan Condor. These dictatorships actually worked together across borders to hunt down and eliminate their opponents.
So, after this unbelievable period of conflict, what was left? What's the legacy? Well, it is not simple. It's a deeply scarred and contested memory that is still shaping the entire region today.
When you boil it all down, this entire era was an epic struggle between two totally irreconcilable visions for the future. On one side, you have the revolutionary dream of a new Latin America built on social justice and equality. And on the other, you have the authoritarian vision of a continent of order and discipline, cleansed of all conflict and dissent.
And the conflict left behind these deep and kind of contradictory marks. On the one hand, the struggle really expanded our ideas of social rights and justice. But on the other hand, the sheer brutality of the repression left this legacy of trauma and a profound suspicion of the state, of political parties, of all institutions, really.
And that's our explainer. We're going to leave you with a final thought to chew on. The ghosts of this turbulent era are far from gone. That tension between the radical demand for total change and the authoritarian call for absolute order, it continues to echo through the struggles for justice, democracy, and identity all across the continent today.